And to answer your question about what's something that stood out to me, I think some of the most fascinating work that I've done is related to the pandemic and how substance use behaviors have changed during the pandemic. So what we've seen is that among teens, substance use decreased significantly when everybody went home and was kind of in the lockdown period. And those behaviors have, for the most part, kind of sustained. Like we've seen lower rates of substance use. We have seen a lot higher rates of poor mental health, a lot higher rates of depression and anxiety, unfortunately. But it's interesting. The substance use behaviors have really kind of declined in the immediate years of the pandemic. However, it's interesting. The teens that are currently using substances are now using at a higher rate. So while the overall rates are lower, those who are using more. So, not necessarily the best news all around, but it is really fascinating and something I want to keep looking at.
Yeah, and as you're keeping looking at that and thinking about that, like I guess maybe like first impressions, you're doing a lot of work with this population. Like what are maybe some of the downstream impacts of a change like this and understanding that change?
So that's, there's I like that you said downstream. There's a lot of changes that can be made at all levels of this. Like part of the research that we're doing is preventative. We're trying to develop an intervention for youth living in Paterson, New Jersey specifically. But there's stuff that we can kind of apply at every like stage of, I guess, substance use. And at this stage, in relation to what I'm looking at, I myself don't have any necessary like specific solutions. I'm still in the process of kind of understanding the issue. But we have found that when it comes to developing, interventions and things to address substance use, it really is um, like a multifaceted issue. You can't just address substance use. You also have to address mental health. You also have to address, you know, risky sexual behaviors. We did find recently that, when screening for HIV, you should maybe also screen for substance use because these things happen. They're sort of co-occurring. So I think that's one of the most interesting kind of in terms of the intervention piece is that, when screening for substance use, you should also screen for mental health. When screening for mental health, you should also screen for substance use. I think that actually is probably the most compelling thing that we found is that if you do screen for mental health, which happens more frequently than we would think, I think a lot of times when you attend or like go to a doctor's visit, they get like an anxiety screener. But I think that would be a critical place to also screen for substance use.
I appreciate that, and kind of just goes back to showing the interconnectedness of, I guess, issues that we look at and how these topics aren't really, they're not siloed. People
Mhm.
deal with different issues all the time, and those things might show up in different ways. So it's how when we are trying to find out the needs of people, we're doing a broader brush as possible to kind of understand what all those different factors are that we have to take
Mhm.
into consideration.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Pivoting a little bit now. So when we first initially spoke, we spoke in 2020, 22, no, definitely 2020 or
Hmm.
2021, one of those 2 years. And it was the beginning of donuts and data on Instagram and sharing data. You have since graduated from your PhD program. Tell us what has been the impact that you've seen of having a public profile to share information about your journey as well as other things that you're learning.
That's a great question. I think, it's made it so yeah, I finished so our interview was in or our talk was in 2020 and then I finished in 2022 and now it's 2024. So a lot has happened. Our accounts have both grown so much and I think having a kind of a public profile or platform along the way has been really like, not only educational for my followers, because I think I've grown a lot in terms of what I share and what advice that I give and what perspective that I have, but it also for me, it's been informative and educational for me learning about what I want to share and what like, what it's been a very like reflective experience for me because I am constantly pushed and challenged to reflect on my journey and what I would have done differently or what I wish I would have known, because I'm always thinking about, what can I share with everybody. I think that piece has been like the most helpful for me is constantly being challenged to like reflect on my journey and also just really think like meaningfully about what steps I take next because it does at sometimes feels like there are eyes on me in some ways. Like I'm not in any serious way. I'm not like a celebrity by any means, but I do know that people always love to reach out and ask for advice and ask, and I always just want to make sure that I'm staying true to myself and I'm doing what I believe in. I'm doing things that I would feel, proud to share. So, yeah.
And as you developed a brand and shared content online, how do you stay true to yourself? Maybe as you're developing as a professional, learning more about yourself and doing all that work.
Well, I think, specifically like I think about this in relation to my career because I always was wanting to pursue academia or an academic career. But recently I've sort of pivoted to being really open to pursuing an industry career. And so I've been so careful about, what I do share with my followers because I want to be very honest about that. And I don't want to mislead anybody or share information that's not true. And so just in terms of like making a pivot, a career change, like it's important to be honest and it's important to give your perspective while also remaining kind of unbiased in a way. So, yeah, I think this has been especially pertinent to me when in my decision to kind of pivot outside of academia and into a different field.
That's real, and I definitely feel that as because there's so many. I feel like people out there, so many perspectives, and oftentimes we kind of stray away from our authentic and original self, or maybe even say something that isn't necessarily what we 100% believe with, but we know it's what people would feel more comfortable with us saying.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
yeah, I've been trying myself to try to get out that box and just like say the thing that I would say because that's what I think people really do want to hear, and we kind of censor ourselves sometimes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I want to always make sure that the things that tell my friends and have conversations privately are the same things that I'm saying publicly. I never want to have a conversation with my friends and my colleagues and my mentors and, this is my experience and this is why I'm choosing to do this. But then I go online and actually, like everyone should be following an academic path. Like, not necessarily. I really want to make sure that, and also the other thing is I want to make sure I do it when I'm comfortable doing it because that's been a big piece for me. It's like, this is my personal life and my personal journey. So I'm making these decisions, I'm going through these struggles. And then once I'm ready, and then I want to be able to go on my public platform and say, this is why I did this. May not apply to you, but this was my experience.
Right. And as I'm saying this, I'm thinking about a post that I've been thinking about creating of like why I haven't gotten a doctoral degree, because I think like that's just a perspective I feel like you don't see too much is people like saying, okay, this is why I'm not doing this, or this at least at this moment. And
Yeah.
I think that's just what I'm trying to like just share more of that authentic self, like coming from what you're saying.
I think that would be really valuable to share because I think a lot of people come to me with kind of that question, like, should I pursue a doctoral degree? Everyone's kind of telling me that I should, and I'm like, you really should think about that before you do it because there's probably a lot more reasons not to do it than there are to do it. It's not something you should just jump and do lightly. So,
Yes, I absolutely agree with that, and maybe we could talk more about that some other time for sure. And I feel like that was kind of the framing of the conversation that we had when we first spoke on the podcast. It was like hearing your perspective of choosing the PhD and hearing Mia's perspective of not going that route. But I definitely think like all discourse is important, and as I've learned over these 200 and something episodes, like there's no right way, there's no one way, there's only the way that you choose to do the work, right?
yes, I love that so much.
I'm glad you do. I'm glad you do.